Bit about myself and why I'm here to talk to you about it. So does anybody know who Thomas International is? Thomas, had any experience? Just one gentleman in the middle. Okay, well, two, thank you. We've been around for a long time. We've been around for a long time here in the Netherlands, and we were famous as publishers of psychometrics tools. We have thousands of clients around the world and offices in 58 different countries, but we're kind of a hidden ingredient behind a lot of people's typical recruitment processes. So classical assessments to help make decisions. So we saw an opportunity about 2.5 years ago to adapt the content that we've created to apply it into the entire employee life cycle. How can we use this powerful information, scientifically proven, validated by age, by gender, by ethnicity, by region, to be predictive of outcomes? How can we use that to help people know themselves a bit better and know how to prosper inside an organization, and how for an organization to use that content to get the very most out of their people? So we've launched the world's first connection platform, and we'll be talking a tiny bit about that at the end. But first I'm going to take you on a little journey, if I may. And the journey is really around what it feels like to be in work in 2025. And before I do that, this is a screen grab of my profile inside the system that we've built using one of our measures. So I am a fairly transparent person, and you'll see the way I present. That's pretty indicative of who I am. So I apologize for the small screen. If you've been zapped, you'll get a copy of these slides, so no need to take any photographs, okay? Unless you want to, of course. This is my better side. Okay, so we're going to look at the reality of today. And so we've talked a lot. I think I've joined about 5 or 6 of the sessions today, and there's been an awful lot about AI, right? So we're going to talk a bit more, but I hope I've got a slightly different inflection and version of what you've heard so far. Oops, I don't know what just happened there. Apologies. I'm going to flick all the way back. There. Okay, maybe there's a button that says right to the end. It was obviously the one I pressed. Who's heard of BANI? The acronym. So everyone's heard of VUCA, the VUCA world we're in. Yep, so everyone nods. We've all been trained from 1986 on what VUCA means, this volatile environment we work in. BANI is how we experience it. So there's a guy called James Cascais who came up with this theory in 2016, and it's really taken off in 2022. So BANI stands for, and this is how we feel VUCA world: brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. Okay, big words, but what it really means is the world is in absolute tumultuous change, and it gives us nothing but fear and nervousness as we try and plan for it. And I talk to my colleagues a lot, and they say, at one point, when are you going to slow down, Luke? When are you going to stop doing new things? I'll jump on when you've stopped. The reality is it won't. And so this Vincent in the front here was talking about they don't do much AI. And I said, well, it kind of doesn't matter because it's changing every day anyway. It's never too late to jump on, but always jump on. At some point, try. And the advantage with AI now is it's getting easier and easier to use because it's becoming more and more observably intelligent, even if we don't agree that it's actually intelligent. Okay, so there's lots of changes going on, and you're having to navigate this as HR professionals, huge amounts. And there's a big change in how people are experiencing work as well. So employees, I know you've all read the Gartner reports, you've all read the Gallup reports, you've probably used that data inside your own organization to say how well you're doing or not well you're doing on something. But the fundamental feeling is, as an employee today, we've got lots of connections, but we don't really know people that well. Teamwork is struggling. We've got lots and lots of courses we're being put on all the time, but are we actually ready for what's happening in the world of work? And we're being bombarded with new technology. I don't know how many tools everybody has. Our organization has about 90 software applications inside our company, and I think that's average. I heard in a larger organization, typically it's up to 300 pieces of software that people have to use. And I'm going to cover a little bit about that, or how it feels to be sort of disengaged. But the reality of all of this is this different workplace is hard for us as HR practitioners, and it's even harder to be experiencing it as an employee. And then we've got this double compound effect of AI and what AI is doing. And there is obviously a glass half empty view, and there's a glass half full view, if that works in the Netherlands as a phrase. But one thing's for sure, when organizations like these are spending hundreds of billions of dollars, euros, pounds in the technology, it's not going away. No matter whether you believe the AI bubble is a bubble, the reality is from these bubbles they pop and then the residual strength comes through. So AI is here to stay. And I've sat at a number of conferences, I've spoken at a number, and the key thing is that AI is the responsibility of HR. And that's my personal view, but it's the view that some organizations take, and others lead it to a chief AI officer or a chief executive or a operations lead or the finance department. It's an HR responsibility, in my opinion, to enable AI because it has the most profound effect on our people. So in the US, I spend a lot of time over there. It's really typical that the title now is Chief AI and HR Officer or Chief People and AI Officer. And it's coming to Europe in a month soon. Anyone got that title already? Okay. Maybe, I mean, Europe's an interesting one because we've chosen to highly regulate here. But if we look in the UK, there's a lot more openness to the application of AI. If you go to the US, it's the Wild West in every way at the moment. But the important thing is that when we introduce AI, we consider people as we implement it. Okay, so we all know that it's supposed to generate huge amounts of benefit. I'm not here to tell you that. You can read it. Everybody knows that apparently we're all going to be becoming hugely more productive. But our people don't necessarily feel that. And this is really important. That classic schism between what you say is going to happen and what actually happens is happening in most organizations, but not to most people. So who has read the Better Up research, Pilots and Passengers? Anybody? So can I guide you to it? It was written last year, and I think it's the most comprehensive review of the use of generative AI inside organizations around the world. 30,000 companies, 18 countries, 10 different verticals. And they asked people, do you or don't you embrace generative AI in your working life? And 72% of people, 74% of people didn't, and the rest did. So the minority did. Those that used it were 3.6 times more productive in their output. Now, is that a proxy for people with, the lady spoke earlier on, a growth mindset, who are really just people that contribute more generally, or is it a sense that that AI is making them more productive? It's a good question because I suggest there's probably correlation, not causation, in that relationship. But we should be looking for the fact that there are huge benefits, but there are a lot of people that are avoiding it actively at the moment, including HR practitioners. So what are we doing about it? How are we helping organizations to navigate and our teams to navigate this crazy time we're working in? It's changing constantly, that has new technologies, new expectations, new ways of working, etc. How do we do it? Well, sensibly, you're starting at the leadership. You know, how do we generate a brilliant group of leaders? You know, how do we make sure that we have the right quality of people trained and enabled at the top and all the way through the organization to drive better results? It's an excellent place to start. There was a presentation earlier on about people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And I know that's something that is used a lot, but I wholeheartedly agree with that. So well done, that's good. We've also spent a huge amount on programs to a small minority of people inside an organization. And the challenge with all of the initiatives here on the left is they're high intensity, they're expensive, and you can't typically cover every member of staff in an organization. So you hit a subset of people with really intensive training programs. And is everybody familiar with something called the marshmallow effect? Yeah? So that's the challenge with a lot of these is high impact, let go, and it pops back. So whatever it is that you had a brilliant intention of changing, straight after that team building workshop, a month later you're going back to the same bad habits, with the same relationships, and the same kind of things that are getting in your way from succeeding inside an organization. And that's the challenge with those sessions. So we also have a whole array of technologies that you've probably all looked at today. and probably all have, or if you haven't got, you're planning to buy some of these. Now, there's a really interesting statistic that Mercer came up with. Excuse me. That Mercer came up with in October in their study. And they were talking about, when I was saying that we have 90 software solutions, and I don't know why it keeps taking itself on. My apologies, it's moving on by itself. Younger people, actually that band of millennials, are the least likely to adopt new technology. Now, and the further you go down, the less likely people are to take on new products. So we're introducing all this wonderful stuff, and we're assuming we're buying stuff for this amazingly energized, youthful audience that just want tech. But they don't. And can anyone think why they don't? Well, they're always on anyway. They're connected all the time. There's no more capacity, no more space for yet another place to go. They've got their favorites. They're on there 15 hours a day. Why do you want another product to go into? So actually, whatever technology you invest in, it's critically important it's available in the flow of work. It needs to be where they already are. Because if you're going to yet another location, yet another app, yet another experience, yet another system, even if you've got single sign-on, it's another user experience, it's another learning environment, it's another pain in the neck for a user. So it doesn't matter how beautiful it looks, how colorful it looks, it's a pain in the neck from a user, and you've got to be really appreciative of that. So young people in particular aren't going to adopt it, and yet we think we're buying it for them. So we need to be really pragmatic when we're looking at technology and look at its usability, and most importantly, its interoperability with places they're already spending time. And the sad thing is, on the wellness platforms, and this was really powerful research for me, and I think it makes sense, but the people most in need of using a wellness platform are the people that will least likely use it. So we're all buying these things to protect the people that, it's a protection, right? To make sure we've got them. But by the time you're in that pit of disillusionment, the last thing you want to do is talk to someone about it. You've already gone over the edge. It's catching those people in the middle. So you've got lots of systems that you're buying, and I'm not saying they're wrong or unnecessary, they're good, but they're not solving the problems, not all of the problems. Otherwise we wouldn't have statistics like this, where people are feeling, in organizations where they have everything, they're lonely. Their leaders they feel burnt out. Well, 20% of managers don't even want to be a manager. So how do we get them more successful? And then we talk about 40% of employees reporting a lot of stress, 30% of employees feeling anger in the past week, anger at work. And that's a pretty heavy feeling to experience. So we've got a really big problem, and technology potentially is a solution. But first of all, I'm going to put you in a really contemporary photograph. This is high-end modern tech. The Beatles is here for a reason. So anyone that doesn't know who the Beatles are, they're the most successful band of all time when it comes to the number of records they created and the amount of albums that were sold and the number of people that copied their songs. But it wasn't an accident. So has anyone read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers book? Yep, one person. They spent hours, days, months together, years together in the Kaiserkeller out in Hamburg for 3 solid years. They could finish each other's sentences. They could write songs together. One could write, the other could play guitar, the other could sing. Then they alternated, but everyone knew their strengths and weaknesses intimately. As a result of that intimacy, in the 3 years they started to record their first albums, they were already brilliant. And they were light years of everyone else. That team felt fully connected. Anyone know who that is? No Germans in the house? It's unusual for a Brit to choose a German example here, but I think they're a pretty special organisation. So this is Bayer Leverkusen. This was the last game of the season last year. It's the first team in Bundesliga history that went unbeaten 51 games in a row, never done before. And the most important thing about it is there were no superstars, not as a manager, not as a player. But they got through it, and they said, why is it that you've achieved something that no one's ever done before? And they said, we trusted each other. We knew exactly where everyone was going to be at all times. We knew they'd be there, and we played it to someone knowing that they had the speed, knowing that they had the spatial awareness, and knowing that they had my back. As a result of that, they achieved great things. So that's what kind of brilliant teamwork feels like. And it boils down to a couple of really basic ingredients. So when we devised our solution, which is called Thomas Connect, and our booth is there, so please come and see us afterwards if you'd like to have a more detailed overview, 3 minutes, 33 seconds. We went right the way back to first principle philosophy, to Aristotle, to look what it is to be a human. And the fundamental drivers of people, and I noticed on the earlier presentation, was a sense of belonging was one of our drivers. Fundamental feeling is to be known and to be understood. In Aristotle's language, it was to be loved, to known and loved. But in workplace, it's to be known and understood, and therefore able to bring our full selves to work. And so you'll see as I go through this build, we tend to come into this problem halfway along the line. And that's why we're not getting the foundational improvements through the other things we're investing in, the other initiatives we're doing. So the first thing is to be aware of ourselves, objectively aware. And our psychometrics, very simple to do, 6-8 minute questionnaires. You can all try it. We'll give you an opportunity. We'll give you that awareness and that clarity to describe exactly who you are and how you show up into a meeting, how you digest information, how you like to communicate, how you like to prepare, or in my case, not prepare. Those sorts of things are critically important. Through doing that, you can share, you've got this confidence, you can start to share, forgive me, we've lost one of our builds, your profile with the profiles of colleagues. Now, the key to our system, and it can be in the flow of work, so it doesn't have to be a place you come to, is you can share the system and the data with everybody, but it's reciprocal. So if you don't want to share with you, if I don't want to share with you, you don't get to see my profile either. But it makes communication really great. And you know those conversations you have people in a room and you just don't get on? You try really hard and you're like, what is it about them that it isn't working? And people feel the same for me. Won't he just shut up? And he says with 1 minute and 40 seconds. So, but maybe there's a point to that. Maybe that's my preferred style, but there is still a way of working with me that could be much, much more effective, where you can extract that value out of my ranting. So how do you get that? And this really comes down to a sense of me being able to be myself, know some other people, how they show up, non-judgmentally, really positively. So we start to build a common framework, a common language, but it's not in a workshop. This is everyday advice, all the time available to you, projected through our own private AI, so that you can see and ask questions of any colleague in order to be able to build a better relationship. It's very ethical, it's fully restrained, it only has our data, so it complies to all GDPR rules, and it's not personal data, it's a psychometric information. But what that does do is connected teams, and I'll get to the fundamentally achieve much more. So this is the kind of feeling I was describing, right? We've got horrible feelings of how we might feel in work today, and we've got the optimal experience of how we might feel if we were really understood. That's what we've been striving for when we brought our information together. And so there's a huge uplift in productivity, because guess what? People that belong, people that feel respected, produce far more quality work, and they enjoy coming to work. And we've come up with our own metric to define connection. And we discovered that disconnected individuals, being disconnected describes 55% of a person's intention to leave. So just not belonging is the single most important factor for whether you stay or go inside an organization. Not your employee value proposition, not your package, not the job, but do I belong? And it also gives you a huge uplift. So we have a platform, it's over there. Please do come and have a look at it, and we'd love to share more on that. This is some feedback I did on Friday. These are questions. I'm really sorry about the small font, but anyone that got zapped can read this, and you can go over and play and ask any question about any of my colleagues that are on the table there. But fundamentally, the questions were things like, what's the best way to work on a project together? This is driven by the asker. So the AI knows who you are and it gives you specific advice, but that's about me. And in this one, how should I prepare for a meeting with Luke? Well, you can kind of guess. And then we've got some specific teams type questions, because we have a whole AI that starts to describe the combination of the team. So is this team any good at project management? Will this team win me new business? Will this team work well together, etc.? And you can start to really experiment and get some huge value. So that stuff's available today. Please come and have a look. And I've overrun by 30 seconds. Thank you for your time. Thank you.